We all have busy lives, right? We all have stressful lives. We all have lives that sometimes we just need to pause and maybe step outside and catch our breath, right? Where do you like to go for your Sabbath, for your refresh? Well, here in Southern Oregon, we have plenty of good options. Stick around. This is Midweek Refresh. Welcome into Midweek Refresh. Now, you probably already figured out I'm not sitting in my office, nor am I in Midweek Refresh World Headquarters, aka the fire pit in my backyard. No, today's a Friday because I know it's not middle of the week, but Tuesday I had some personal things to take care of, and Wednesday and Thursday kind of just came and went, and so you catch me on a Friday. And on a Friday, at least the last few weeks, I like to get away and slip out of town just a little bit. And so I'm sitting on top of a mountain right now. I got to be honest with you, I don't know what mountain I'm sitting on top of. I don't know exactly where I am. I know how I got here so I can make my way home, but I'm only about 25 minutes from my front door. I know I'm sitting at about 4,000 feet elevation. It's about 30 degrees and it's spitting snow and it's windy. But this is a good place to be. I've got a fire going and I'm able to keep a little bit warm as I sit here and talk to you all. I was reading through John chapter 11 the other day. I know we've kind of been going through the Gospel of John together in this podcast. We paused the last couple of weeks. But as I was reading through John 11, I'm always refreshed by what I come to in this passage. Now, this is a story from the Bible that probably everybody's going to know. You might not automatically recognize John 11, but you're going to know the name Lazarus because this is his story. See, in John chapter 11, we read about a man named Lazarus, a dear friend of Jesus, the brother of two other dear friends of Jesus, Mary and Martha, has fallen sick and is going to die. And Jesus, who's very capable of reaching out kind of just through time and space to heal him, doesn't. Instead, Jesus has another plan in mind. And Jesus knows what's going to happen, but he also, I think, to some degree knows what needs to happen. John chapter 11, the story's going on, and one of the big verses that jumps out to me is in verse 4, when he says, "But Jesus heard it," talking about the disciples have told him that Lazarus is sick, and he said, "This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." And as you read on down, it shows that Lazarus has died. Lazarus, by the time Jesus shows up, is dead. He's been in the tomb now for a while. And Jesus tells his friends plainly in verse 15, "For your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe." In other words, Jesus knows sometimes things have to happen in our lives for us to truly believe. Now again, if you've missed the first few episodes of this Midweek Refresh, when we talked early on in the Gospel of John, there's a word that we see over and over. In the Greek, it's the word pistiwo. And pistiwo is translated to believe in English. We see it 98 times in the Gospel of John. It's a very key theme in the 21 verses of this Gospel. But as we go on, Jesus shows up to Bethany, right outside of Jerusalem, where Mary and Martha are. And they're distraught. Of course, they just lost their brother. If you've been through loss, you know what that means to be distraught like this. And they're kind of, I don't know if they're angry at Jesus, but they're angry that he didn't show up. Or at least they're hurt that he didn't show up because they know he could have fixed it. And even in the midst of their sorrow, they look at Jesus and they say, well, we know he's gonna rise again on the last day when there's resurrection. We know at that point he'll rise again. And Jesus gives one of his famous I am statements when he just looks at Martha and he tells her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die." And I think about this passage because we've talked a lot in the last few weeks as I've dealt with some personal loss, and I know so many of you have dealt with loss too. That's what gives us hope, is the idea that Jesus is that resurrection and the life. And that as we believe in him, that death's not the final thing for us. Like we'll live in eternity. But But the story goes on from there, because Jesus hasn't actually done anything yet. He's just shown up, and he's just told them this statement. And he goes on down, and you get into verse 38, it starts getting into the actual miracle. But Jesus actually requires something before he acts. Look in verse 40. Jesus says, this is to Martha, because he tells her to go to the tomb and open up the tomb and roll the stone away. And she's like, dude, he's been in there for a few days. He's going to stink. It's going to smell really bad. In fact, in the old King James here, it says, he stinketh. One of my favorite King James phrases. But Martha says, he's going to smell. He's been dead for 4 days. Dead bodies stink after a while. And verse 40, Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? That's key. Because I think for so many of us, faith for us is, yes, we have faith that God can do anything, but to some degree, we have to have some sort of something tangible to hold on to. Like, God, I'll believe in you if I can look back and see what you've done for me. And that's not a bad thing. We want to look back to see what God has done, because that does help us have faith. One of the things I like about this mountaintop where I'm sitting is I can see so far in either direction. The mountains you can see behind me are probably a good 30 or 40 miles away. And they don't look like it, but they are. They're a long ways away. One of the biggest ones is actually several miles south of my town. And I'm about 20 miles outside of my town right now. I can look to the other direction, which is to the northwest right now, and I see this coastal range that extends for miles and miles between here and the Pacific Ocean. We're about 45 miles inland from where we're sitting right now. But that's what's nice about a mountaintop. You go a little further up the road I turned off on earlier, you get to an old fire lookout. And those are all over the place out here in Oregon, because out in front of me is a prime place for a wildfire come next summer. That's where they break out. It's out in the middle of the forest, out in the middle of the mountains. It's hard to get to those spots. And those lookouts let you see for miles down into valleys and in between hillsides, and let you spot danger. And I think we like to be up high where we can see what's out in front of us. We can see what's coming. I can see things in all directions right now. But yet God asks us not only to trust him with things that we can't see, but to start walking in those directions anyway. I heard this statement this week, and it was really stuck with me. Faith is acting like you believe that God is telling you the truth. In other words, faith has more to do with your feet than it does your feelings. Let me ask you a question here, and I want you to chew on this a little bit. When God asks you to do something, do you wait around for him to prove that it's the right thing for you to do? Or do you do it trusting him that he's telling you it's the right thing to do? Do you just go ahead and move? Do you go ahead and start walking in that direction that God has told you to walk in, not knowing what's going to come next, but believing that he's telling you this is the right way to go? Now, as the story goes on, they move the stone away, and Jesus has to be very clear that he calls out, Lazarus, come out, because I don't know if there were other dead bodies in this tomb or not, but who knows who might have come out if Jesus would have just said, come out, you know. But Lazarus walks out. Lazarus comes out, and he lives, and he goes on about his day. And I've thought so much about this passage this week, because it's so easy to get stuck in a situation where you can be waiting for God to answer a question that you've asked, and God's answer has already been given to you. It's just not detailed enough for you. I get it. I'm a detail person. I like to know where I'm going. But God's telling you to move. He's telling you, go in this direction. I'll reveal the details to you as you go. Man, if that's you, I just want to encourage you. Trust God this week. Man, put your faith in the creator of all of this. Let him show you the way as you're going. Again, I didn't know exactly where I was coming here today. I just drove and followed roads until I found a good spot. And I'm glad it led me here, because it led me to a day that is refreshing for me. It led me to a day in God's creation. It led me to see some incredible things about my creator. And man, it's encouraged me to trust him even more. Have a great rest of your week.